Armin had always believed that every person gets at least one chance to restart their life, but when his own life kept falling apart again and again, even he started to lose hope. He had grown up in a noisy city where he worked long hours, lived in a small rented room, and barely made enough to survive. Every morning felt the same, and every night carried the same routine exhaustion. His dreams of doing something meaningful slowly faded as bills, responsibilities, and stress kept piling up. One day, a letter arrived that changed everything. It came from a lawyer who informed him that a distant relative, someone he barely remembered, had left behind an old farm, and legally it now belonged to Armin. The farm was far from the city in a quiet, rural area. The news was unexpected and confusing, but Armin took it as a sign. Maybe this was the chance he had been waiting for. Maybe this was the moment to pause, step away from his difficult life, and try to build something new. He packed a few clothes, his old tools, and a notebook where he had once written his dreams. He didn't tell many people he was leaving. He simply informed his employer and gave up his room. The bus ride to the countryside felt long but peaceful. As the city disappeared behind him, Armin felt a strange sense of freedom. The tall buildings were replaced by open fields, and the sound of traffic slowly faded into the calm rhythm of nature. When he finally reached the small village near the farm, he could smell fresh grass and hear birds he hadn't heard in years. He asked a local shopkeeper for directions, and the man smiled gently, saying the farm had been abandoned for a long time. Armin felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. A place forgotten by people might be difficult to manage, but he had already made up his mind to try. He walked along a narrow dirt road surrounded by tall trees. The air carried the soft scent of soil and blooming plants. After a while, the farm came into view. The wooden fence was broken in many places, and the gate hung loosely from its hinges. The house itself looked old but strong, its walls worn by time, its windows dusty. Tall grass covered the front yard, and dry leaves lay scattered everywhere. Even with all the damage, Armin saw potential. He imagined the place repaired, clean, and full of life again. For the first time in years, something inside him felt alive. He pushed the gate gently, and it creaked loudly, as if complaining after years of silence. As he stepped inside the yard, he felt the soft crunch of dry leaves under his shoes. The silence around him was calm, not lonely. It felt like the land was waiting for someone to return. Armin placed his bags near the porch and walked around slowly to inspect the area. The barn behind the house was missing a few wooden planks. The vegetable garden was completely overgrown. The water pump looked rusty, but none of this scared him. He knew with time and effort he could fix everything. After all, he had nothing else waiting for him. This farm was now his chance, his responsibility, his new beginning. When he reached the front door, he noticed it wasn't fully locked. He assumed the lock had broken. He pushed it gently, and the door opened with a long, tired groan. Dust floated in the air as sunlight entered the room. The inside of the house smelled old but familiar, like memories stored away for many years. He stepped in, leaving faint footprints on the dusty floor. The living room was empty except for a few old wooden chairs and a table covered with cobwebs. The floorboards creaked under his weight. Armin looked around and felt a sudden mix of emotions: loneliness, curiosity, hope, fear. He opened a few windows to let fresh air in, and the gentle breeze immediately made the place feel more alive. He decided to explore the rooms one by one. The first bedroom had an old bed frame, a broken mirror, and a window with sunlight falling across the floor. The second room was more or less the same. Everything looked untouched for years. Armin told himself he would start cleaning the next day. Right now, he simply wanted to understand the space that was now his home. But as he walked through the hallway, he heard something faint, a soft sound, almost like a whisper. He stopped and listened carefully. The house was supposed to be empty. There should have been no voices, no movement, nothing except the sound of wind outside, but he definitely heard something. His heartbeat increased slightly. Maybe it was an animal. Maybe the wind had passed through a broken window. He tried to calm his mind and walked slowly toward the back of the house. The sound came again, this time clearer, soft voices, as if people were whispering or talking quietly. Armand froze for a moment. He was alone, or at least he thought he was. Fear and curiosity fought inside him. He took a deep breath and continued moving. At the end of the hallway was a small wooden door. It was slightly open, and a dim light flickered inside, like the warm glow of a lantern. Armand felt confused. Who would be inside an abandoned farm? And why would they have a lantern? He pushed the door wider, slowly, making sure not to startle anyone, or himself. The hinges creaked softly, and as the door opened fully, Armand's eyes widened. Inside the room were 3 young women, sitting close together with a small lantern placed on the floor. They looked just as surprised as Armand was. Their eyes widened, their expressions freezing for a moment. None of them expected to see a stranger standing at the door. Armand didn't know what to say at first. His mind went blank. The women looked healthy, normal, and calm, not like trespassers who meant harm. They seemed more scared of him than he was of them. One of them, with a gentle face and warm eyes, stood up slowly. She looked cautious, but polite. Who are you?" she asked in a soft voice. Armand swallowed and replied carefully, "My name is Armand. This farm, it belongs to me. I just came here today." The 3 women exchanged worried glances. Another woman, sitting close to the lantern, sighed deeply. Her voice was calm but emotional. "We're sorry," she said. "We didn't know anyone would come. We thought this place was empty. We've been living here quietly. We didn't mean to disturb anything." Armand felt the tension in the room. He looked at their tired faces, their simple belongings placed neatly in the corner, and the way they sat close together like people who had been through something difficult. He could have shouted, he could have asked them to leave immediately, but something about their presence felt different. They didn't look dangerous. They looked lost, maybe even desperate. Armand remembered his own struggles, the nights he felt helpless, the days he wished someone would show kindness. He couldn't ignore the human reality in front of him. He took a small step forward, not aggressively, but gently. "It's okay," he said softly. "I'm not here to fight. I just want to understand." The women relaxed slightly, though the tension still hung in the air. The first woman introduced herself as Sana. The second said her name was Maria. The third, who had remained quietly seated, softly said her name was Heba. Armand nodded slowly, trying to process the unexpected situation. He had come to this farm to start a new life, but now he found 3 strangers already living in it. He didn't know what their story was or why they were here, but he could feel that there was more behind their eyes. Something emotional, something real. The silence in the room was soft but heavy, carrying unspoken feelings. Armand stood there, unsure of what to do next, while the 3 women watched him with hope and fear mixed in their expressions. In that moment, Armand realized one thing clearly. His life had already changed the moment he stepped onto this abandoned farm. And whatever happened next would shape his future in ways he could not yet imagine. For a long moment, Armand and the 3 women simply stared at one another as if time had stopped. The dim lantern light flickered gently along the walls, creating soft shadows that made the scene feel even more unreal. Armand had imagined many possibilities when coming to the abandoned farm, but never this. 3 strangers quietly living inside a place everyone believed was empty. Sana, the one who had first spoken to him, took a slow breath. Her voice trembled a little as she said, "We really didn't expect anyone to come. We thought this house was forgotten." Armand nodded lightly. Honestly, I didn't expect to find anyone here either. Heba, the quiet one, looked down at her hands. Maria kept her gaze on Armin, studying him carefully as if trying to understand whether he was angry or kind. Armin knew they were worried, maybe even scared. He wanted to ease the tension, so he stepped back a little, giving them space. "I'm not here to force you to leave," he said gently, "but I need to understand why you're here. How long have you been living in this house?" Maria and Sana exchanged glances, silently deciding who should speak. Finally, Maria leaned forward slightly. "We've been here for almost 8 months," she said. "We were searching for a safe place, somewhere peaceful. This farm looked abandoned, so we thought no one cared about it." Her words were simple, but the weight behind them was heavy. 8 months was a long time, long enough to build routines, attach emotions, and create a small world of safety. Armin began to understand why they looked so anxious. They were afraid he would break that world. "Did you fix the place?" Armin asked carefully, noticing how clean the small room was compared to the rest of the house. Sana nodded. "We did what we could. We cleaned some rooms, repaired small things, and tried to maintain the garden outside. We didn't want to harm anything. We only wanted a place where we could restart." Her voice had sincerity, the kind that couldn't be faked. Armin noticed their belongings were simple, just a few bags, some clothes, tools, and the lantern. There was nothing messy, nothing careless. They had truly cared for the space. He could have demanded more answers, but instead he said something unexpected, even to himself. "Please, tell me everything. I want to understand your story." The women looked surprised. They had expected anger or orders, not patience and willingness to listen. Sana sat down again, and after a small pause, she began. She explained that she had left her hometown due to financial struggles. Her father had become ill, and her small job wasn't enough to cover expenses. When things became too heavy, she moved to the city for work, but life there was harsh and expensive. She eventually met Maria and Heba, who were facing their own difficulties. Without family support and with limited opportunities, the three women supported one another and tried to survive as best as they could. One day, while searching for temporary shelter, they reached this area. The farm looked empty and forgotten. They pushed the old door open and realized no one had lived there for years. Out of desperation, they stayed for one night, then another. And soon they decided to repair the place little by little and live quietly, hoping no one would ever come. Armin listened without interrupting. Their story wasn't dramatic or exaggerated. It was simple, but full of real struggle and emotion. It reminded him of his own hardships, his lonely days, the pressure of city life, the nights he felt hopeless. He found himself understanding them more deeply than he expected. Heba finally lifted her eyes and spoke softly. "We didn't want to take anything from anyone. We only wanted safety. This place became peaceful for us. We planted vegetables behind the house. We fixed broken furniture. We even cleaned the roof gutters during the rainy days." Armin felt a mix of surprise and respect. The women had taken care of the farm better than he had imagined. When he looked at them again, he no longer saw unwanted strangers. He saw people who had given life to a home that everyone else abandoned. "So all this time," he asked slowly, "you three have been living here alone?" Sana nodded. "Yes. We didn't bother anyone. We avoided attention. We just wanted a quiet place to rebuild our lives." Armin walked a few steps into the small room, not threateningly, but thoughtfully. He looked around at the clean floor, the neatly arranged things, and the lantern's soft glow. He realized something important. They hadn't taken over the farm out of arrogance or carelessness. They had done it out of pure need, and they had respected the home in the process. He let out a gentle breath. "I understand," he said. "It must have been very difficult." Maria looked almost relieved. "So, what will you do now?" she asked. Her voice was calm, but Armand could feel the quiet fear inside the question. He didn't answer immediately. He walked to the window and looked at the dark outside. The night was peaceful, with crickets singing softly in the distance. He had come here for a fresh start, too. He wasn't here to chase others away or create conflict. His heart felt too tired for that kind of life. After a moment, he turned back to them. "I didn't come here with a big plan," he said gently. "I only came because I needed a new beginning, just like you." The women watched him carefully. "This farm is mine legally," he continued honestly. "But I'm not the kind of person who would throw someone out just because they're struggling. You've taken care of this place. You respected it, and you didn't cause any damage." Sana's eyes softened with hope. "So, what are you saying?" Armand took a deep breath. "I think we should talk openly about how we can share this place, at least until we understand what the future holds." Maria let out a breath of relief. Heba's shoulders relaxed. Sana's eyes filled with gratitude. None of them expected kindness, especially from a complete stranger. Still, Armand raised his hand gently. "But before anything, let's be honest with each other. You deserve to know the situation. I came here to rebuild the farm completely. That means repairs, painting, cleaning, hard work. It won't be easy." Maria spoke quickly. "We can help. We already know the place. We can work together." Her eagerness made Armand smile slightly. "Maybe, but we need to set clear responsibilities." He knew he wasn't promising something small. He was choosing a path filled with challenges, but also possibilities. Maybe their shared struggles could lead to shared strength. Sana looked thoughtful. "We don't want to be a burden. If you allow us to stay, we will work just as hard as you. We can cook, clean, repair, grow vegetables, whatever is needed." Heba added softly, "We can make this place better, together." Armand slowly nodded. The idea felt unusual, unexpected, but not wrong. In fact, it felt strangely right, as if fate had brought all four of them to the same place at the same moment for a reason. He walked back toward the door of the small room, giving them a reassuring look. "We'll figure out the details tomorrow. Tonight you three should rest. You've clearly had a long journey, and I'll rest too. Tomorrow is the beginning of something new." Before he left the room, he stopped and spoke again, his voice calm and sincere. "Thank you for taking care of the farm." The three women exchanged a look filled with relief and soft surprise. No one had thanked them in a long time. They had lived in fear, waiting for someone to push them away. Yet this stranger, this unexpected man who had every right to be angry, chose understanding instead. Armand stepped into the hallway and closed the door gently behind him, leaving the three women sitting quietly with the lantern's warm light. As he walked to the front room, he felt a strange sense of peace. He had arrived at the farm alone, but he wasn't alone anymore. The night felt different now, less uncertain, more hopeful. Armand knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in years, he felt that life might finally take a better turn. Maybe this abandoned farm wasn't abandoned after all. Maybe it was waiting for all of them. The next morning, sunlight filtered softly through the dusty windows of the old farmhouse. Birds chirped outside, and a cool breeze floated in through the gaps in the wooden walls. Armand woke earlier than usual, surprised at how peaceful the place felt. For the first time in many months, he didn't wake up with the noise of traffic or the stress of work pressing on his chest. Instead, he felt a quiet excitement about the day ahead. He washed his face with cold water from a bucket, stretched his tired muscles, and stepped outside. Dew covered the overgrown grass, making the whole yard shimmer gently in the morning light. The old farm looked worn and tired, but still full of hidden promise. Armand breathed deeply, letting the fresh country air fill his lungs. As he walked around the yard, he noticed small signs of the work the three women had done during their months here. Someone had tried to clear a small patch of land near the back fence. A few gardening tools were lying nearby. There were even faint lines of footprints leading to a water pump that looked recently used. He slowly smiled. They had cared for this place long before he arrived. A few minutes later, Sana stepped out of the house, tying her hair back with a small cloth. She looked surprised to see him awake so early, but she smiled politely. "Good morning," she said. "Good morning," Armand replied. "Did you sleep well?" She nodded. "Better than the last few days. Yesterday was stressful, but today feels different." Armand agreed silently. "Let's start planning," he said. "We have a lot to fix." Soon, Maria and Heba came outside, too. Together, all four of them stood in the front yard, looking at the house as if seeing it clearly for the first time. Armand pointed toward the roof. "That's the first major problem. It leaks in several places." Maria folded her arms and studied the structure. "We can help clean the inside while you repair the outside," Sana added. "And we can fix the back garden. We used to grow vegetables before winter." Heba, speaking softly, said, "We can make small repairs. Painting, cleaning, sorting things." Armand nodded, impressed that they were ready to work without hesitation. "All right," he said. "Let's create a plan." They gathered around an old wooden table on the porch. Armand pulled a small notebook from his bag. He had once used it to write dreams he was too afraid to follow. Now, the notebook was becoming something practical, something real. He made a list: roof repair, barn strengthening, inside cleaning, painting walls, fixing furniture, restarting the garden. They decided to divide responsibilities. Armand would take charge of the heavy tasks, Sana would focus on gardening, Maria would clean and organize, and Heba would repair small wooden items. With the plan ready, they all scattered to their tasks. Armand climbed a ladder to inspect the roof. Several wooden planks were loose or broken. Wind had blown leaves into the gaps, causing moisture to gather. As he started removing damaged pieces, sweat formed on his forehead, even though the morning was still cool. His muscles ached with effort, but the work felt meaningful, nothing like his old job, where he spent hours sitting behind a counter. Meanwhile, Sana walked quietly to the back garden. She knelt down and touched the soil with gentle fingers. The earth was dry, but still alive. She began pulling out weeds, humming softly to herself. Every movement was careful and patient, as if she was talking to the land with her hands. Maria, inside the house, opened windows and let sunlight flood into rooms that had been dark for years. Dust floated everywhere. She tied a cloth around her nose and started sweeping. Each stroke of the broom created small clouds of dust, but she didn't stop. She scrubbed walls, washed windows, and even found old photographs hidden inside a drawer. She placed them aside respectfully, feeling like she was cleaning not just a room, but a forgotten history. Heba worked quietly in a corner of the living room. She collected broken chairs, loose boards, and cracked shelves. With a small hammer and a set of tools they had brought with them, she began repairing one item at a time. Every hit of the hammer made a steady, reassuring sound. She didn't speak much, but her calm presence filled the house with a sense of quiet purpose. Hours passed, but the work felt strangely satisfying. Whenever they crossed paths, they exchanged small smiles, short encouraging words, or a glass of water. Around midday, Sana prepared a simple meal: bread, boiled vegetables, and tea. They sat outside together on the porch, eating and talking softly. It surprised Armand how natural it felt to share a meal with three people he had met only yesterday. There was no awkwardness, no tension, just a growing bond formed by shared effort. After lunch, they returned to work. Armand fixed the major leaks on the roof and then helped Sana dig deeper into the soil. Maria discovered an old wooden cabinet covered in dust and restored it with care. Heba repaired the front door hinge, making it open smoothly for the first time in years. By late afternoon, the farm already looked different. The house breathed again. But as they stood together observing their progress, they realized the barn needed urgent attention. Its walls were weak, and the door was nearly falling off its hinges. "We should fix this before it collapses," Armand said. All three women nodded. Together, they lifted wooden planks, hammered nails, and supported the structure from the inside. Sweat dripped down their faces, and their hands grew tired, but no one complained. They were building something with each nail, each stroke, each breath. When the barn finally stood firmly again, they walked back toward the house with smiles they couldn't hide. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. "It's starting to look alive," Maria said softly. "It feels like we're building a future," Sana added. Armand looked at all three of them. "We are," he said. But just when the day seemed perfect, something changed. As they approached the porch, Armand noticed a piece of paper stuck between the wooden railing and the door. It fluttered slightly in the wind. He picked it up, and the moment he saw the official stamp on it, his heart sank. It was a notice, a legal notice from the local authorities. Sana stepped closer, her voice worried. "What does it say?" Armand read it slowly. The paper stated that the farm was in an unsafe condition and required official inspection and approval before any restoration work could continue. If repairs were carried out without permission, they could face fines, or worse, be forced to stop all work. Maria's hopeful expression faded. "What do we do now?" Heba looked down, her fingers tightening nervously. "Will they make us leave?" Armand folded the notice carefully. He felt frustration curling in his chest, but he pushed it down. Giving up wasn't an option, not after everything they had already done. "No," he said firmly. "We won't leave, but we need to do this the right way." Sana looked at him. "Do you think they'll listen?" "They will," Armand said with quiet determination. "We'll gather every document, every detail the officers need, and we'll go to the local office together. They need to see that this farm isn't being damaged, it's being saved." The three women stared at him, surprised by the strength in his voice. They had met him only one day ago, yet he was already speaking like someone who refused to let anything break their new beginning. Maria nodded slowly. "Then we'll go with you," Heba whispered. "We won't let the farm go." Sana placed her hand gently on the railing. "This place gave us hope. We won't lose it." The farm glowed softly under the evening sky. The long day had tested their bodies but connected their hearts. They had started the morning as four individuals with different pasts, but by sunset they were a team, united by hard work, shared dreams, and a growing trust. Trouble had arrived sooner than expected, but none of them felt defeated. Instead, they stood together on the porch, watching the sky darken, knowing that tomorrow would bring its own challenges. But for the first time, they also knew they wouldn't face those challenges alone. The abandoned farm was no longer abandoned. It had found its people, and its people had found each other. The next morning came earlier than anyone expected. The rooster from a nearby farm crowed loudly, waking Armand before the sunlight even touched the yard. He sat up, still feeling the weight of the legal notice in his mind, but he refused to let fear control him. For the first time in many years, he had something worth fighting for. Not just the farm, these people, this small beginning, this shared hope. He washed up quickly and stepped into the porch. Sana and Maria were already awake. Sana was checking the garden soil and Maria was folding the blankets they had used. Heba came out a moment later, her hair tied neatly and her soft eyes eager but nervous. "Are we going today?" she asked. "Yes," Armin replied. "We'll go together." Sana stood up and dusted her hands. "I made a list of everything we repaired yesterday. Maybe it will help," Maria added. "And I took pictures of the damage before and after. If anyone asks, we can show proof." Armand felt grateful. "This will help a lot. Thank you." They packed water, some snacks, and the notice letter. Armand locked the house gently, even though the lock barely worked. Then they started walking toward the village, where the local office was located. The road was quiet, lined with tall trees that formed a natural pathway. Birds flew from branch to branch. The three women walked slightly behind Armin at first, unsure of how the officers would respond. But as they walked, Armin slowed his pace, letting all of them walk side by side. This wasn't his fight alone anymore. When they reached the village, the atmosphere felt different from the peace of the farm. People moved quickly, busy with their daily routines. Shops were opening, carts were being pushed to the market, and elders sat outside their homes talking with each other. As soon as the four walked into the local council office, a man sitting behind a desk looked up. His eyes moved from Armin to the three women and back again, clearly curious. "How can I help you?" the officer asked. Armin stepped forward respectfully. "We're here about this notice," he said, handing over the letter. The officer adjusted his glasses and read through the paper. After a moment, he raised an eyebrow. "You've started repairing the old farm?" "Yes," Armin replied calmly. "I inherited the place. It was in bad shape, but we're fixing it properly." The officer tapped his pen thoughtfully. "There are rules about structural repairs. We need to make sure you're not damaging the land or risking safety." "We understand," Sana said gently. "That's why we're here, to follow the rules." The officer looked at her, then at Maria and Heba. His expression softened slightly, sensing their sincerity. "Do you have any proof of the work done so far?" he asked. Maria immediately stepped forward and showed the pictures. The officer scrolled through them slowly, impressed not only by the repairs, but also by how carefully everything had been handled. "You all did this yourselves?" he asked with genuine surprise. "Yes," Armin said. "We're trying to rebuild it with care." The officer leaned back in his chair and studied their faces. "Most people don't bother fixing old properties. They just want quick money or quick results. You're doing the opposite." "There's something special about that place," Heba whispered. "It helped us when we had nothing." The officer looked at her kindly. He placed the letter on the desk and folded his hands. "Since you're doing everything with respect and responsibility," he said, "I'll send an inspector to your farm tomorrow morning. If everything looks safe and proper, your work can continue without any problem." Maria let out a relieved breath. Sana smiled gratefully. Heba's eyes softened with quiet hope. Armin bowed his head slightly. "Thank you. We appreciate it. But remember," the officer added firmly, "the inspector must see honesty. Don't hide anything." "We won't," Armand promised. They thanked him again and left the office. As they stepped outside into the warm sunlight, it felt like they had already crossed half the mountain that stood in their way. On the walk back to the farm, they spoke more freely. Sana talked about the vegetables she wanted to plant, tomatoes, spinach, and maybe some herbs. Maria discussed ideas for organizing the kitchen and turning the empty shelves into useful storage. Heba shared small dreams she had kept hidden, making handmade wooden decorations, building small stools, and fixing old boxes. Armin listened quietly, feeling a warmth grow in his heart. He had come to the farm alone, but now he was walking back with people who were slowly becoming a part of his life. When they reached the farm, the place looked even more beautiful than usual. The roof repairs shined slightly in the sunlight. The barn stood straight and strong. The front yard, though still messy, carried the signs of their hard work. They spent the rest of the day preparing for the inspector. Sana and Maria cleaned the rooms again, making sure everything looked tidy. Heba fixed loose boards near the porch. Armand inspected the roof one more time and cleared the pathways. As evening approached, they sat together on the porch, tired but content. The sky turned orange and gold once again, painting the farm with warm shades of hope. "Whatever happens tomorrow," Sana said softly, "we tried our best." Maria nodded. "And we worked together." Heba looked at Armand. "Do you think the inspector will approve everything?" Armand thought for a moment. "I think he will. We've done nothing wrong. We're rebuilding, not destroying." The three women smiled. They trusted him more than they had trusted anyone in a long time. Night came quietly. The stars appeared one by one, shimmering above the roof of the farmhouse. Armand couldn't sleep easily. He walked to the yard and looked at the moonlit fields. The air was cool, carrying the scent of soil and fresh grass. Sana noticed him and came outside. "Can't sleep?" she asked. "Not really," Armand admitted. "I keep thinking about tomorrow." She stood beside him, looking at the horizon. "Whatever happens, you're not alone." Her words carried a gentle strength. Armand felt something shift inside him. Not dramatic, not sudden, but warm. Like a quiet assurance that he had finally found a place where he belonged. The next morning, the inspector arrived earlier than expected. He was a middle-aged man with sharp eyes but a calm presence. He shook Armand's hand and looked at the three women curiously but politely. "Show me around," he said. They walked together. Armand explained the roof repairs. Sana described the garden. Maria showed how they cleaned and restored the inside. Heba presented the furniture she had fixed. The inspector examined everything carefully, taking notes, checking stability, touching the walls, inspecting the soil, even tapping wooden boards to check their strength. When he finished, everyone waited nervously. The inspector closed his notebook and looked at them with a small, approving smile. "You've all done a good job," he said. "It's rare to see a group take care of an old property with this much responsibility." Sana's breath caught with relief. Maria covered her mouth, smiling widely. Heba closed her eyes for a moment, whispering a silent prayer of gratitude. Armand felt his shoulders relax for the first time since receiving the notice. The inspector continued. "I see no reason to stop your work. You have permission to continue restoring the farm. If you need any materials or guidance, come to our office." They thanked him with genuine happiness. After he left, the four of them stood together in the yard, not speaking for a moment, only feeling the deep relief wash over them. Finally, Maria burst into laughter. "We did it!" Sana clapped her hands softly. "Everything will be okay now." Heba looked around the farm with shining eyes. "This place is home." Armand nodded slowly. "Not just home," he said. "Our new beginning." For the rest of the day, they worked with renewed energy. Every repair, every step, every moment felt lighter. The fear was gone. The future felt welcoming. By sunset, they sat again on the porch, but this time with peaceful hearts. The sky glowed softly, and the breeze carried the quiet promise of better days. Armand looked at the three women who had once been strangers in his home, but were now part of his life in a way he could never have predicted. "We'll rebuild everything," he said. "Together." Sana smiled warmly. "Yes, together." Maria leaned back, relaxing, and this time without fear. Heba whispered softly, "We found our place in this world." The abandoned farm was no longer abandoned. It was alive, filled with trust, teamwork, and the beginning of a new family formed by destiny, kindness, and hope. Their story wasn't just about fixing an old house. It was about repairing themselves, one day at a time. And in that quiet evening light, they all knew something simple and beautiful. The hardest days were behind them. The peaceful ones were just beginning.